of the Planning Commission is to go through an exercise of deregulation of the zoning regulations, okay? And it's not like this was just an isolated issue that what we're going to be talking about tonight, the potential for a text amendment in the R districts. There are a list, a relatively long list, not long enough list, of steps that the Housing Committee and the Planning Commission have taken to amend the development code, the city's development code, zoning regulations, and sent to the City Council, where Councilman Duncan and others have agreed to adopt regulations. And just real briefly, if you may recall from last year, and I'm sorry about my voice, I'm not doing well tonight. Last year, the city adopted a set of regulations that will allow for accessory dwelling units, ADUs, okay? That's in place. Very, very little controversy, very little feedback and pushback on that idea, which did allow the introduction of, if you will, some multifamily, in a small context, introduction of multifamily in single-family neighborhoods. And the consequences of that change are very slight, okay? Just a handful of ADUs have come down the road since that time. But it's something, you know, it added, whether it's 1, 5, 10, or 100 housing units, it's added housing units to the city's housing stock. We proposed, and the City Council approved, a number of text amendments that allowed for higher density residential development, things like smaller lot size. I don't want to get lost in the weeds, but you all are smart people. The smaller lot sizes, shorter setbacks, higher height maximums, just the ability to put more residential structure onto a smaller piece of land, with the idea being that's going to reduce the cost of housing a little bit, a lot, but some. Okay, it's going to reduce the development cost for the builder, with the idea that that's some of that savings at least is going to get passed on to the consumer. Okay, in theory. Okay, but it's all we can do. The tools that the Planning Commission have are the zoning and subdivision regulations, the land use regulations.
Go ahead, sit down.
We can't parcel out money. We can't hand out grants. We can't hire a construction company to go out and build a subdivision. We can't do any of that stuff. Okay, we have the development code, and like cities all over the country, and it's been happening for the last 20 years, and it's accelerating all over the country. Folks are taking a look at their land use regulations and seeing where they have had over-regulation, okay? We'll come back to that in a second in my brief remarks. But over-regulation, meaning regulation that creates more of a burden on the housing market than a benefit to the community, okay? I'm not opposed, because I'm a retired attorney, and virtually all my time as an attorney was spent drafting land use regulations for cities and counties around the state of Kansas. So I believe in this stuff, okay? I do believe in it. I think it's important to the quality of life of the community. But I also, it didn't take me too many years to figure out that the regulations that maybe a client city or county wanted were going to obstruct, impair, restrict the housing market, because it was going to create limitations upon land that can be built upon, limit the choice of housing that can be built on that land. And when push comes to shove, you have high interest rates, and you've got a loss of construction contractors and builders across the country, high cost of materials. It all adds up. It contributes to a housing shortage and an affordability problem in this country that's just, it's obscene. It's obscene, okay? Anyway, back to my brief remarks. One of the charges of the Housing Committee was to try to facilitate the goals and objectives of this. And Mark, I know, is familiar with this, and I imagine a number of others are. It's the 2020 Housing Study, okay, longer title, Housing Market Study and Strategy. It's an excellent study that's now 5 years out of date, and my belief is that as dire as the situation is painted in here, the situation in Topeka has gotten worse. Affordability of housing, you know, cost of housing has gone up a lot in the last 5 years. Mortgage rates up higher, supplies, materials, and so forth. But anyway, what our charge with the Housing Committee was to try to help facilitate the goals and objectives here, meaning putting more housing in Topeka. It means more affordable housing, workforce housing, market rate housing, senior housing, everything across the board, rental housing, everything. Anything, we're short. And you'll have a PowerPoint slide on this in a moment to specify just how short of the housing we are, the housing count we were 5 years ago. 5 years ago, okay? And it's worse today. It's worse today. Anyway, we're also working with the planning staff right now to show you this, what we're talking about tonight isn't just dropping out of the sky. We're also talking about parking, off-street parking requirements, because that's a cost of development, okay? And we're talking about ways in which we can accelerate or accommodate, make more viable multifamily housing in the multifamily zoning districts, M2 and M3 zoning districts in the city, if you're familiar with the zoning matrix. And also to allow residential use in the C4 residential districts. These are all techniques that other cities have used to try to open up land area where you can build housing, okay? Where you have infrastructure in place, and that again, that translates to a lower cost of development and should translate to a lower cost to the consumer, sure. In theory, and it can, and it does. We keep our fingers crossed. We can't control the market price of housing. What we're going to talk about tonight, and talk with you guys and answer questions and have a discussion, is a proposal to amend the R1 and R2 zoning district regulations to allow for the introduction of 2, 3, and 4 flex housing units, either as right or as conditional uses, okay, or a mixture of both, okay? And we'll talk about that in a little. Staff will explain that better than I'm going to with my bad voice. But I want you to keep in mind this point I made earlier about deregulation. To remove some of the over-regulation, the limitations on private property development rights that no longer serve a purpose, that do not benefit the community as much as they cost the community. Okay, suppressing the housing market in some ways, again, just part of the puzzle, but they do suppress the housing market, drive up the cost of housing. This is a lucky break for you, right? Can't talk.
Can't hear, can't talk.
But, people's private property development rights, zoning takes it away. And again, I like zoning. I've made a career out of zoning. But zoning takes your development rights away. If you didn't have zoning in the city of Topeka, the sky's the limit. You could build an office building, you could build a crematoria, you could build a tattoo parlor,
You'd have Houston.
A bowling alley, you could build a shooting range next to a house, next to a school, next to a church.
Next to a school.
And so through zoning you have limitations. Well, those limitations are important, but they can go too far. And they've gone too far in Topeka. The regulations are outdated. We need to address them and putting it before the community. We've talked to different groups, neighborhood associations, we've talked to developers, and I'll shut up at this point, okay?
Real quick, something you mentioned in regards.
My hearing is real bad. A couple
Okay,
of people
sorry.
here know that, but you don't.
So, in regards to the cost of housing going up over the last 5 years, you mentioned in Topeka, is that any different or proportionally out of line with anything else going on in the country? Or is that just everything's going up? Or is that specifically Topeka? I guess that's my question.
The cost of housing, both home ownership and rental, has exceeded the increase in wealth, wages, by a factor of like almost 2 to 1 across the country. And I don't think there's any difference here in Topeka.
Okay.
The statistic that just came out, this sounds like a planted question, it's not. The National Association of Realtors, an interest group, okay? They promote housing, but they said that upwards of 85% of the population cannot afford a traditional down payment on a starter home right now. 85%, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. And it's fair. My question was specifically just proportionately, is Topeka any different than anywhere else? That was because it made it sound like we were things were growing differently here when I heard you say that, so I was curious if we were out of the norm. But we have a pretty good standard of living down here. Pretty low.
Any time left for Dan?
Plenty of time. Okay, so I'm Dan Warner. I'm with the city's planning and development department. So before I didn't realize exactly what meeting this was, so I had my own agenda. So obviously there's time for questions, but let's try to get through the presentation first. It's not very long. I think some of you have seen this before, or at least a version of it. But let's go through it anyway. So what's driving this proposal is the Special Committee on Housing. It's a Planning Commission special committee. And Jim's touched on this a little bit, and so the idea is to propose changes to the Topeka zoning regulations to allow duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes in our residential districts. And we'll get a little bit more into that later. The current idea, which is obviously subject to change, but it's worth discussing these concepts anyway, is that current idea would be duplexes would be allowed by a building permit subject to special standards. So what does that mean exactly? That means that's administrative review. So if somebody submits a building permit for a duplex and staff reviews it against a certain set of conditions or standards, and it can be approved administratively. So again, it's administrative review. If you hear somebody say it's by right, that means that it's administrative review. And then the idea would be triplexes, quadplexes would be by conditional use permit. So what's a conditional use permit? So it's a similar process to a rezoning. And with a rezoning, we have a notification. So we notify adjoining property owners. There's a neighborhood information meeting. There's a public hearing at the Planning Commission. And ultimately, the governing body approves those actions. So this conditional use permit is the exact same process. It's not doing the same thing though. A rezoning is changing the color of the map. So, single family zoning is yellow on our zoning maps. Change to multifamily would change that color to brown, I guess, or something.
Or a different shade of yellow.
Or a different shade of yellow. What the CUP does is it doesn't change the color, it approves a particular use on that property through that process, that conditional use permit process. It does not rezone the property.
Because right now, it's not allowed, period.
Correct.
Are there inspections or anything? Do you physically go out and look at the property before getting the administrative review or the conditional use?
Yes. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about conversions? Or, because it...
or the duplex, either one.
You want me to answer that real quick?
Sure.
Okay, so it's by building permit. So what that means, duplexes by building permit, that means we get a set of plans, we review them, we have we have GIS maps that we look at, we have a site plan, and so we're checking for setbacks, number of parking stalls, and these standards are going to have some architectural standards as drafted. So we would check that. We probably wouldn't go out to the site and look at the site before a permit's issued, because really we have enough information online to approve building permits. We don't go out and look at the site before we issue a permit.
When you're talking about duplexes, you're including new build, but also the conversion of existing single-family homes into duplexes.
Yes.
Or triplex.
So that's the current draft. That's what it does. The current draft.
And no inspections after that.
No, there are inspections. So any house that gets a building permit, any duplex gets a building permit, has to also meet building codes, and we have a building inspector that makes sure it meets building codes.
But there's no notification for those at all.
No.
Through the administrative review. No.
But you're doing away with neighbors being able to object.
Not notifying the neighbors what's going on.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, say that again. What is it? On duplexes, there is or is not notification of neighbors?
As it's on this particular slide, administrative review does not require property
Okay.
notification.
Yeah.
No follow-up inspection for sort of housing quality or living quality in a single-family home that's been converted to, say, 2 duplexes. There's no follow-up there after the building inspection, right?
No.
Well, there's no building inspection with that. They just have a permit. so they're not physically on the ground there.
They will inspect for, like, there's construction inspections, you know, the different electrical and plumbing and all that stuff. As the property is being built, they'll inspect those things.
But it's a
through the process.
pre-existing, is there any inspections? I mean, so let's say I have a basement and I have a separate entry into my basement, and, you know, I say this is an egress window. Is there any inspection to qualify that that's actually an egress window?
So if it's being converted and you're pulling a permit, they're gonna check for those things. They're
Would
gonna
they
check
have to
for
pull a
building
permit
code.
even though for a conversion?
Yes.
Yes.
How do you notify the neighbors? Because apparently all this is kind of, this has been going on for a while, and I paid pretty close attention and really didn't know much about it until recently. So how will you be notifying neighbors?
Okay, so this process that we're going through here is not what this is.
I understand that. I get that.
So this is, we notify within 200 feet, that's our legal notification. We have a policy where we require a neighborhood information meeting, and generally that's up to 500 feet that we notice for that. And then there's a public hearing at the planning commission. So those are the notifications through the conditional use permit process.
Okay, so the duplex, there's nothing.
As it's stated right there, yes.
So for clarity, these three major bullet points are almost like options that you're considering proposing. Like option A is a full rezone modification. Option B is, this is the whole enchilada. Is all one process that's going to be presented to council.
So we're going through a process currently by coming to this meeting and talking to you about this. Bullet 2 and 3 are the current options.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that bullet 2 couldn't turn into CUP for duplexes. So there's options.
Yeah, he has several more slides, and
Okay.
probably answers to these questions.
Potentially. Okay. All right, so Jim mentioned the citywide housing market study and strategy. It's a very big document. It does a lot of different things, but for this particular project, it identified a need for more affordable, kind of quality affordable housing and missing middle housing. And missing middle housing is basically 2 units up to 20. It's those, from single family, from 2 units to 20, it's kind of, and anything above that's kind of large multifamily. But anyway, the key findings of the study is that it identified gaps in Topeka's market for a number of different types of housing. So affordable housing, workforce housing, senior housing, and also for the market rate type stuff, the for sale, the rental units, the market rate. There's demand for a lot of different housing units over the next 20 years. I think one thing that potentially has gotten lost through this process a little bit is that this idea to potentially introduce duplexes or tris and quads to single family zoning is not going to solve that housing need. It might help, but it's not the only thing that's going to help that. What Topeka has done to try to help that is create a land bank. Topeka has created an affordable housing trust fund. Topeka has this incentive that it can use to build new housing called the RHID, which is the
Rural Housing Incentive District.
Rural Housing Incentive District.
Now I'm going to change to reinvestment.
Reinvestment Incentive District.
It started out as rural.
Yeah.
Now it applies to-
So if you watch the news and see like some multifamily project that is getting built, it likely has gone through this process with the city for the RHID as an incentive to help that project get built, and maybe some other incentives. So there's some other things going on to help address this market gap for these types of units. The duplex thing is just another part of that potential solution, not the whole solution. So some strategies from the housing study that apply to this project is promote the development of a diverse mix of housing types. That's probably more so what this is about. Expand the production of affordable housing. And again, Jim has mentioned this, the planning commission can initiate and recommend changes to the zoning and subdivision. I don't know, if you add those numbers up, it's probably about 14,000 units.
It's 14,400 is the total on that. Keep that figure in mind, okay? 14,400 in the next 20 years, back date to 2020.
So this slide isn't completely up to date because we have 2025 information now, and so I think we're at about 750 total units over the last 5 years. So since 2021, Topeka's added, be it single family, duplex, multifamily units, about 750 or so units. What Topeka needs to be adding yearly to get to those goals is basically 750 per year. So it's not like we're not building, but we're really not keeping up. We're really not getting there and getting over the hump, so to speak. So there's some good things that are happening. There's no doubt about that. There's some great projects that are happening, but we're not really keeping up.
And so we are building triplexes and fourplexes, but not in the R districts right now.
Correct.
Okay.
What workforce are you talking about needing to have this for? Because the workforce has increased 1,000 in these 5 years. You're suggesting that market study, it said 3,700 jobs need to be accommodated, right? 3,650 units of workplace housing. Does that mean we have 3,600 jobs that are coming to Topeka over the next 20 years, or if we had 1,000?
The classification system we use is based upon the average income in the area.
Okay, do we
And
have
so
enough
that's
jobs?
looking at a 60 to, I think the workforce housing is housing that's linked to populations, households that have incomes of, I think it's 60 to 120% of the average median income of the community.
So there aren't new jobs coming. We're just.
This is all statistics.
So
The projection, and
Statistics.
keep this in mind
So-
too, this may seem like a disconnect, but it was explained in the study. This 14,400 units over in the next 20 years, that is with a projection of a Topeka population flat. Okay? No addition to the population.
And there hasn't been one in 50 years.
That's right.
Market.
I've lived here.
66 years.
And the population is flat.
60.
So why do we need more workforce housing units?
So
Because
can I
we
try to
have
explain that?
a very high percentage of existing housing that is in poor condition, low average condition, unsafe condition. And we have people leaving the community because they can't find the kind of diverse housing stock that they can find in other communities like Manhattan, Lawrence, Kansas City. So
So,
we lose people, we're bleeding people out,
Jim,
households that could be formed.
can I try to explain?
The largest crime area is where
Okay,
they
so
did this already.
these are categories of what people can afford. It's not the fact that they're workers or, so workforce housing really applies to people that can afford, like teachers and people that work, downtown in coffee shops. It's that type of housing, that's what that's trying to speak to, that we need more housing to accommodate those folks that have trouble finding housing that's affordable. It's not an affordable category per se, but it's workforce housing. It's housing for people that are,
Teachers.
yeah, so I don't know if that helps, but.
Wow, teachers, I work for
It does.
501. More than 25% of our teachers do not live in Topeka.
Yeah,
That's exactly it.
That's the
Yeah.
problem.
yeah, because it's hard to find an apartment we
And
can
that is
afford.
not
And
because of the money, they live in more expensive neighborhoods.
Can I ask, Lawrence is not affordable. Can I ask a question from these gentlemen that's been overlooked this evening? Could you please tell me who is on this committee for the planning commission? What are the names of those people? They're on this committee that made the recommendations.
Do you have a listing of members of the planning commission?
I do, I'm talking about your committee.
Okay, well,
Yes.
They're a subset of that.
Okay, so they're all members of that same,
yeah,
planning
there's
commission.
four of us.
including you. Okay.
Janice?
Of those people on that committee and the three of you sitting here, how many of you live in the city of Topeka? That's it.
How many live inside the city?
In the city limits of Topeka. Do you live in Topeka? Do you live in Topeka? Do you live
I live in Lawrence.
Okay. I think one of the things that you need to understand, these people in this room are not feeling represented.
No, I am feeling represented. They're doing hard work as a citizen of the city of Topeka. I've lived here since I was like, what, 3 years old? I appreciate the work that they're doing here. They're telling us, hey, we need more housing, and I believe that there's a need to have high-quality housing that's affordable.
I agree.
If it's new build, if it's conversion, whether this is from existing units or not. So I want to hear them out and hear their arguments.
I'm just trying to figure out where the information is coming from that they keep referring to committees, and you go to a committee and a committee reports to a committee. and
I'm
because-
puzzled why you're asking where the information's coming from.
Well, you go to one committee meeting and then they tell you it comes from over here, and to be quite honest, I went to the Affordable Housing Committee that spent 2 years discussing what they're gonna do with $1
The
million.
Planning Commission's Housing Committee was created last year. You have a Housing Committee of the Planning Commission, 4 members of the 9 members of the Planning Commission. You have a 9-member Planning Commission, and then you have the City of Topeka governing body.
I
That's
understand
it.
that, but we're asking for direct answers, and when you go from one meeting to the other, and literally, an issue is being discussed for 2 years, and a group had to stand up and say, we have people that need help with rent. There's $1 million, and there is 12 people in a room still discussing what to do with this city money? We have some availability.
We stay in our lane. The only one I mentioned before, that we have the development code. That's the toolbox that we have. Nobody else messes with the development code except the Planning Commission and the governing body. The Housing Committee has input, make recommendations to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission weighs that, considers it, holds public hearings, and forwards something to the City Council, and they do what they want.
That's
So
like the-
really, it's a linear thing, okay? And nobody else messes with the land use regulations.
Mark,
That's like
would
Daniel
it be okay if you went through the slides and then we took questions? Because I think we're not gonna get through it.
Is that good, everyone?
Yes, I want to hear
Please.
something, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
all right.
So to recap this slide, we're at about 750 units in the last 5 years. We should be, 750 every year. So the other thing to share here before getting into a little more of the detail of the project is just some this bar graph here that relates to zoning in Topeka. So every property in Topeka has a certain zoning classification. You all have more than likely residential zoning. And of all the residential zoning in Topeka, 87% of that is single family. So the R districts are single family, the M are the multifamily. So 87% of the zoning in Topeka, residential zoning, is single family, which basically currently allows just one. Okay, so staff, when we do these projects, we try to look at other communities. Lawrence was mentioned a couple times tonight. They have a zoning code that allows duplexes by right. South Bend, Indiana, some other cities around, and some states are actually starting to mandate these things as well because they're starting to recognize, that there's a housing issue and are frustrated that cities aren't doing things. And so Montana, of all places, has a law that requires cities of 5,000 population or more to allow duplexes by right in single-family zoning. Some existing duplexes that were built probably in the 1940s, 1950s in Chesney Park. Some examples more recently, new construction. The image on the left is in East Topeka. That gentleman built out a subdivision out there through an RHID project. And then the one on the bottom right is at 12th and Lakeside. There's a couple duplexes that got built at 12th and Lakeside. So we mentioned this idea of administrative review, which again is one possible option. What that means is it would require some standards to be part of that administrative review. And generally speaking, the property should be big enough to accommodate that duplex. If an alley is available, that access should come from the alley and not from the street, so no driveways if there's an alley available. And then that last bullet relates to the width of that driveway. Sometimes duplexes can become front yards full of driveways, so we're really trying to limit how wide that driveway is. The idea would be to include a landscape requirement as part of this process. There's a number of subdivisions and duplex subdivisions around town that are devoid of trees and landscaping. Some very general architectural design, more so if it applies citywide, it's hard to have very specific standards about
McClure
architectural design. And then if someone can't meet the standards, they would be able to go through the conditional use permit process. So that's the end of the presentation. And so I guess, is there any questions?
Then I have a question. So, the study that you referenced, it points out that there's actually kind of an abundance of single-family homes in Topeka priced at $120,000 or less, and even an abundance of homes, single-family homes priced at $120,000, slightly above $120,000, I think to $190,000. But it suggests that they don't serve the population as they should because of lack of maintenance, disrepair, and also because of lack of amenities in many of the neighborhoods in which they exist. And it suggests, more than once in your report, recommends that the city work to have those, rehab, brought up to a higher standard so that they are attractive to people who want to buy in that range. And they suggest that by doing that, you're also going to improve the quality of the neighborhood, probably cause new amenities to be introduced. I think people in Topeka have been saying things like that for a long, long time. This report says that, that's kind of like a reoccurring theme in this report. But you guys, maybe you're addressing it elsewhere, I don't know, but not in this presentation, but it's not quite about that, but and there's a lot of housing there in those two categories. And I think the report even suggests that if you do those things, we might attract some people who are currently going to Lawrence or elsewhere. It also says that landlords and speculative investor kind of landlords have bought up lots of housing, especially in the inner city, and thereby removing that property from the housing market. But they also say that it's often not well maintained, and then they, I think, generously say, when landlords are probably not going to bring it, raise the standard of repair and upkeep on those properties until neighborhoods increase in their quality and amenities. I don't know if that's a chicken or egg thing, but they say those things and other things that in their report, the one you commissioned, it seems to make sense. It seems to say there's lots of. I'm not suggesting we don't need some new housing in Topeka. I think a quality place to live and get support. But it does suggest there's property there that maybe we can turn to help address this problem. It also suggests that there are landlords, people out of the city, out of the state, they can say that in so many words, but I think that's the idea. We're also buying their property. And taking them off the market and maybe not maintaining them. So,
they sit empty, right?
Oh, they sit empty, and it also says there are lots of empty properties in Topeka and vacant lots that the city, I think it suggests the city has a role in this, ought to begin to look at as viable places to repair, bring to a standard, and make available to people. So I don't know if it's market rate or what, but at least we need to use those spaces.
Does the study address that?
That is the study. Yeah.
The vacant lots and using that and all of that.
Yeah, it does.
I think there may be an identification of the number of vacant lots.
Yeah, I think it's in there.
But not started for this.
Yeah,
there's strategies.
Well, the infill development that comes from the missing middle. Mark made a number of really good points, very valid points. And the city does have some housing rehab programs, but we don't we don't have anything to say with that. I mean, that's not part of the land use regulations.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to touch on was the phenomenon that has been going on around the country, and it has hit Topeka, and that is investors going in and buying housing. Maybe it's owner-occupied housing, maybe it's rental housing, but they buy it and it becomes rental property. And then it becomes an issue of, is that landlord going to maintain the property?
Yeah.
And the city has to step up and get a housing division with the city and code enforcement. But I don't know of any city in Kansas that I've ever worked with where people are completely satisfied with the level of code enforcement. You know, it's a tough thing to do. Probably you
Especially
make
if
a
they
lot of
don't
people
live
angry.
anywhere in the
But,
state.
you know, you gotta protect the property.
Well, I think the other thing is, there's property maintenance codes, but those don't always cover the livability of the unit inside the unit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are a lot of those problems, and you know, so the city has limited control over what landlords do with their properties. You know, property maintenance codes, but they might not say you need to have a decent sink in the kitchen. I mean, you know, so I think there are, so there are limitations there.
Some cities have tried to put a cap or some kind of a limit upon the outside investors coming in, and they line up in court and they lose. So.
Well, in addition to the round units, there's the VRBOs.
This lady's been holding her hand up for a few minutes.
I think you're hitting on where the anxiety, my own person, I can't speak for others, my personal anxiety comes from some of these things you're talking about. I grew up in central Topeka. My dad had an apartment in our house, you know, we call it an apartment, now it's an ADU or something, but, you know, and that helped my parents afford a home. He bought houses in the neighborhood close to him and converted them into some of the things you're talking about. He and 3 other men in our neighborhood, they took very good care of their properties, they did this. But then others came in, bought up some of those properties, did not maintain, and then the people from the state, they used to rent to people from the state, Blue Cross, they walked to work, you know, it was great, it worked. But then neighborhood went downhill, and I know the tornado was a factor in that, and some, you know, some other housing that was built that was probably necessary, but they concentrated it in one area. But, you know, and now I won't drive by the house I grew up in, because it's not because I'm afraid to drive through, but it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to drive through central Topeka if you love that neighborhood. And I do. And so if we don't have any way to protect, you know, protect it, it's very scary. I mean, and so that's where my anxiety comes from, this personal experience. And so, and then we have Calamar over there on the State House grounds, which I totally support the city deciding to do that. We need senior housing, but I don't even know what they're going to be able to do with that at this point. I don't know what the next steps are with that. So, you know, I think there are reasons why people feel anxious, and your committee obviously has done a lot of research. You have a good, you know what you're trying to address, but I think our anxieties come from real issues, and I'm not sure that your committee can fix that. I think that's, like you said, that goes back to the city, but it is, there are a lot of layers to this, and so, but we do need housing, and I agree with that.
I had 2 things. The first one was you showed the graph that had how many were single family units, and that's just the number of units. But you don't have a graph showing how many families each one of those things actually serve. So obviously the single family units serve as single family. But the ones that have apartments might serve more. So it's not, I don't think that's a real good picture of how many people the single family units are serving, as opposed to how many people, you know, the percentage of people that each one of those is serving, and maybe where we need to think about, you know, just to be more realistic about who's being served by which category. And the other one I have, the question I have is, so is this idea of, your plan, does that cover every single family unit area in the city of Topeka, or just those in the central part, the older part of Topeka? So out in the outer skirts, the more newer neighborhoods, does this qualify as doing the same thing over the entirety of
The
Topeka?
last question first.
Yeah.
It's a starting point for the committee,
Yeah.
and for the staff too, that any set of regulations we're going to apply uniformly across all similar zone property. I mean,
Okay.
there's legal issues associated with that, so
Yeah.
any R1 property, any R2 property, under the proposal that's under consideration right now.
No matter
these
what the
regulations would apply
cost
equally.
is for that neighborhood, because like there are other neighborhoods
Yeah.
that are more expensive than there are.
So
Okay.
at our Potwood meeting, staff talked about the fact that HOAs would probably be exempt from these provisions. That's a big part of Southwest Topeka.
But
Yeah.
it wouldn't be exempt, it'd be up to the HOA. The
The
says.
HOA would govern, not,
No, the city's rules govern these private property agreements under an HOA. It's up to the HOA whether or not to go
to
forward
allow,
with that.
an HOA would not allow conversion.
They're not going to be.
Why would they not allow conversion, sir? Tell us. Well, I think we all know, because they're gonna protect their property interests.
Yes.
Exactly. Homeowners all across the city have made significant investments in their neighborhoods. They want that protected. And single-family housing, the zoning protects that investment. You're making a dramatic change in the nature of the zoning, and that's why people are anxious about this proposal. I don't think anyone is upset about the idea that we need to address affordable housing. I think they're upset about, we're not gonna solve it through conversions of old homes in College Hill or Potwin or Westboro. We can solve it the old-fashioned way. You guys do a great job sitting down, when you do it, sitting down with neighborhoods, coming up with plans. The Fremont Hill development's a great example in High Crest. You put new housing downtown. You outlined in your study a number of areas that are conducive to multifamily housing integration. I think that's a great idea. Let's do more urban planning and less urban chaos.
Yeah.
Because I think the anxiety people are feeling is you're introducing chaos into every single family neighborhood by allowing this to go forward with the idea that an individual or an investor is going to convert a house into a duplex, maybe a triplex, multiplex. On the duplexes, there's no neighborhood involvement. We're gonna have to rely on the city to police the standards. And I think even with the cut procedure, you're forcing neighborhoods to fight off one bad development at a time. So they're in a perpetual state of warfare to try to preserve their neighborhood. I listened to the Planning Commission remarks from College Hill in July. That's what they spoke to. They spoke to the importance of neighborhoods. People don't just invest in the home, they're investing in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that's the anxiety that you really haven't addressed. I think, like many people here, we want you as a city to address affordable housing, but we want you to do it in a thoughtful way that engages the neighborhood, not imposes something on the neighborhoods that we have to deal with, house by house, block by block, year after year. We want some certainty. That's what I think people are speaking to.
Yeah.
I'm going to make three quick points as someone who will have to vote on this maybe if it comes to the city council. First is I'm a little frustrated by tonight's presentation, not directed towards staff, I guess directed to the subcommittee. Jim knows I like him, so this isn't about Jim personally. This came to my committee, Policy and Finance, and there were three of us on that, myself, Councilwoman Hofer, and Councilmember Miller. We asked questions, we had many concerns, and we put up some very clear objections. I see none of those incorporated into what is essentially the same presentation we got 2.5 weeks ago.
Yep.
So I just hope the committee is hearing that you heard from three people who have a vote on this, that we threw out some concerns,
And so I hope by the time this gets to the Planning Commission on August 18th, some of those are in there. I just want to get that out there now, and if you want to go back and watch that committee, you can see, and those included things like getting rid of the CUP. You know, we talked about divvying these up. We think these are three very different issues: the issue of duplexes, the issue of everything above a duplex, and the issue of breaking up your home. We don't think these should be all bundled into one thing that comes before us. So those were some of the concerns we expressed.
Councilman, in fairness, okay, every one of the comments that you and your other council members on the committee brought are been noted, okay? We have not had an opportunity for the housing committee to deal with those specific concerns, because I was in the hospital. Okay?
Well, and that's fair, but I want this group to know that those were out there.
We're having a meeting next week to talk about this proposal and variations thereof, to take into account the concerns.
And that's fair, but no one in the room knows this. They only see this presentation, so they're not aware.
Part of the reality of what can get done and what cannot be done. That's not lost on anyone.
I got you. The second thing is, here's where we're at in the process. This is a subcommittee that's going to make their recommendation to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission can do whatever they want with this. I mean, they could make changes, they could pass it, they could reject it. I don't know what they're going to do. I will be watching along with all of you. I guess the one good thing is, as you've heard this gives you an opportunity as a public to express your concerns to them. My committee did ask that once it goes through Planning Commission, if something comes out, we get it first before it goes back or would go to the city council, so we can have a chance to have, again, these conversations if we want to make changes. This is one of those things that, unlike a lot of things that come out of the Planning Commission, we are not bound by law to have to use the golden factor. This is one we get to actually have a organic conversation and make those changes. So that's where we're at in the process, and then if it gets through all there, then it would go to the city council, and you all know that process works. So my third thing is, just for whatever it's worth, I don't support the majority of these changes. There's pieces of it I really like. There's pieces of it I have serious concerns with. There's pieces I know, and if anyone's heard those, if you're at a hot one meeting or another one I've been at, the Councilwoman Hofer, Councilmember Hiller, Councilmember Miller have all expressed. So I think it's good you keep expressing your concerns to us, and we have this conversation. But I also want to know, and the three other council members who've been a part of this conversation, myself, we're not near done with this in terms from our perspective either. So I want you to stay vigilant. But maybe the anxiety could go down just a little, but so I want to, whatever that medium is. So I just wanted to give you that perspective as we work through this as a couple council members.
Well, I just want to echo that I appreciate the way you divided the issues out, that conversion of existing dwellings, duplexes, triplexes, and more. Because in my neighborhood, which is Collins Park, one of the big issues is parking. We already have a problem with Washburn students moving into houses owned by somebody's parent, and there's not enough parking. And so I think that's a huge issue in relationship to existing dwellings and conversion. And I would just say, on behalf of our neighborhood, there is great concern about this, even just amongst the rumors without any, probably more amongst the rumors without any presentation, but it's a deep concern. We have great investment in our neighborhood and our homes, and we don't want that threatened in any way by what is proposed and attempting to be a positive solution for the community. But my specific question is, what's going to happen on the 18th? Are you expecting to make a decision at the Planning Commission on the report, or could it happen at any point?
So the process more than likely will be August. Is that 18th? Is that what you meant, August 18th?
Yeah.
That is, this will be a discussion item on the Planning Commission's agenda. Not necessarily this. It could be something different as far as, again, those two bullets are concerned, the second two. And then we're scheduled to go back to Councilman Duncan's committee later that week. I think the 21st.
So you do think there's a recommendation coming out of the 18th meeting?
No, it's a discussion item. No action.
Okay.
It depending on how things go, it possibly could be September Planning Commission where there would be action. But again, there's no action in August. It's a discussion item, and then going to the council committee for discussion.
Just to kind of open it up with them.
So the committee needs to give some feedback to the Planning Commission about where they're at, and then the Planning Commission, can consider that, but not take action. And again, discussion on the 18th, council committee on the 21st.
Hey, Dan, what's the origin of the housing study?
Geez,
What consultant did you pay?
it's Development Strategies. The one that did Development Strategies did this study. They did the downtown market study before that, actually. And I don't know specifically whose idea it was, but I mean, there was a steering committee and all sorts of action back then.
Thank you.
Are you, can I ask a quick question? Maybe you've already done this, but I wonder if you would consider doing a forum, a public forum, where you talk about I think there were 6 or 7 specific.
That's a good idea.
Strategic recommendations, I think, in the study. And they all sound like things we ought to be doing, and that might do a lot towards solving the housing problem in Cuba.
This is why we need the Citizens Committee. Commission.
What you've done so far.
Citizens Commission.
So far, and what you're planning to do next, and talk to us about whether or not you think those are recommendations that can lead to good results regarding the availability of housing and affordable housing. That would be good to know. It also good to know what your thought is on parking. I mean, I know I keep hearing parking, and I know it's a cost to developers, and I surround here as to the cost, probably discourages the kind of development we're looking for. But surely you don't expect developers to build a fourplex and not include parking, would you?
No, I don't think that's where we're going with parking. So the first point, I think we would need a governing body member to suggest that we do some of the things you're talking about, have a presentation about the housing study and talk about some things. I feel like, we can do that. There's a number of things
It
that
shouldn't take somebody from the governing body.
That's just the reality of the situation. And the parking, no, or nothing about parking changes means no parking. It might mean less parking, for sure, because Topeka requires too much parking, but we,
All it takes is a directive from the Planning Commission to do that.
But yeah, it won't be no parking.
Can I share something real quick about
neighborhood you stand right in?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
We keep saying proposal, and it is that.
Not mine.
What I want to know is the practical matters.
Right there can call it a public hearing.
Absolutely.
The planning department works for him.
Not on this one.
As then we're just being presented a fait accompli.
No.
Can't one of the members of the Planning Commission call the public hearing? Because technically, planning staff works for the Planning Commission. It wouldn't take somebody from the governing body. Couldn't the director of planning or the subcommittee say, hey, we want to have a public hearing on this? And it could just strictly come from the Planning Commission.
I'm just suggesting it probably shouldn't be staff that decides to do a presentation on the housing study. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough.
I think the chair. Yeah. So on my street on Harrison, there has been a lot of opportunity homes that have been diminished in their
Will Naker?
So basically on Harrison,
Will Naker.
some of the homes have been purchased by another single family owner, and he's upkeeping them himself. He's redoing them, and we've seen now my house has been revamped by myself, and about almost like 6 or 7 others are in the process of being rebuilt and rehabbed. And one guy's going to rent one house, and then he's looking to flip the other one, but they will stay as single family. So I feel like organically the problem is solving itself, because if you just like don't touch the kettle a little bit, organically the prices will go down enough where the opportunity cost makes it where, hey, I can just buy up this lady's 2 houses that she has. She wants to get rid of them, and then he's making them look beautiful to be rentals for families. And so my concern is that from the lens of this group that you're in, it's almost like the only way to solve things is through the lens of zoning and modifications to zoning, when in reality, the actual solution to this is just having better roads, more better police and safety to make it where more people see a reason to purchase the dilapidated housing or the at-risk housing. We need things to be happening organically, and from all the houses that I've been knocking on for my campaign for District 1 councilman, they are all against this. And I didn't propose it in any way, shape, or form, one way or the other. And so I got 0% in favor, and I don't really think this is fair to the existing city council members who, that could be a factor on their reelection. This could be a factor on their next election. And I just really think we need to take a step back and then look at the will of the people, especially what we saw at the church a few weeks ago.
Doesn't the problem require like a multifaceted approach though? Like that, what you're saying is one solution, but then they have the rental grant to help people with rental costs, and then they have this proposal, so it's a huge problem, so it requires many different
Well, I agree with you. It does require many approaches. It's just that this is so heavy-handed because it's changing the zoning from R1, R2 across the board of all of Topeka.
Right.
Not just to test sample zone. This is like a heavy-handed top-down approach, which we need to be careful for as a city and do it more like scientifically and be like, well, let's just try this deeply at-risk area and see how it goes over a 5-year study, get feedback from the public. No, if we do this carte blanche, then what we're going to find is it's going to become San Jose very rapidly, where I had to park in San Jose on my literally front lawn of the property I rented from. You know what I'm saying? Things can get bonkers real quick. So I just think we should step back and then let things organically solve themselves, and then do very small sample sets to intelligently analyze along the way instead of something so heavy-handed as this. But I agree with you, yeah, we do need multi-vector approach.
It just seems like it's not solving itself, though. The problem has continued to get worse, like over the past 5 years since the study was done. They
said 750 in the past 5 years. We need 750 a year. So, and this is one option of many, as they said. And I think it's something worth looking into. I don't agree with people saying we shouldn't look into this at all. I think we should look into how we can implement this intelligently.
He's not. That's not what you said. He didn't say don't look at it at all. He said look at it in a more strategic manner. Incrementally. Don't just basically throw the baby out with the bathwater and say there's no need for single-family unit areas. There is a need for that.
Do you know how many Myers Place, which is 16 acres, and I think that's down by Skinner's, it's northwest Lyman and east of Vale, passed from, it changed from R1 to M1, 2-family dwellings. Do you know how many dwellings will be built on that, and will they be affordable?
I believe there are 40 lots. So if they're duplexes, that would be 80 units. That's a potential, but you have to understand that it's an existing subdivision that the infrastructure has not been built. So it's going to be, if that's going to happen, realistically, it's going to happen in phases, just because the infrastructure.
Well, but it still will be built at some point in time, and then
potentially, yeah.
Gosh. Okay, and then there's rezoning that was approved, Northwest Kansas Avenue and Rio Street, for 190 units.
Yeah, so that is a situation where an affordable housing developer, that is the type of developer that they build and finance their development by use of the low-income housing tax credit, which is a federal program. They have to apply for that. They haven't applied yet, so they have that land under contract. If they get awarded those tax credits, then they would potentially go forward, and it's zoned to allow them to do that. And that's at, like you said, it's North Kansas Avenue, Rio Street.
They got a study
half a mile north of US 24.
The back credits will bankrupt Kansas.
Okay.
They haven't been
My question was, I've heard part of it, but I would be concerned on any change, especially in our older neighborhoods, has the city and planning commission come together to have a discussion about how this is gonna impact our sewer, our water, and some of these things. I know in Potwin and some of our older neighborhoods, we have water and sewer problems on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So increasing density in some of our areas, while making something affordable, may not become affordable for the city if we are constantly asking them for repairs. So have we had those departments come together and even talked about what an impact this would have on our infrastructure, not just parking wise, but on our utilities, on our traffic? Do we talk to each other? I'm sorry, Spencer, I'm looking at you, and what I'm saying is,
I don't know, I'm making a note of it.
and I'm gonna say this to you and this crowd in reality. As a resident of this city, I am very disappointed in the lack of communication amongst the city departments and amongst the city and county.
Yeah.
Because as all of us know, we have to depend on you to get things done. We can't go do our own sewer or our own water line. So I would hope before we take on a major change like this, that we really look at the impact, not only of what housing we can create, but can we afford as citizens
The Citizens Commission
what
would
that
solve
may
this.
do to our infrastructure and the cost we may bear.
As your mayor, the Citizens Commission would become a reality.
We
That
can
would be.
certainly talk to our utilities department about, the prospect of adding a couple of units onto a particular block and what that might do to the sewer and water.
They size the sewer mains for a certain capacity, and so that's a question we got.
And we'll check those in Hollywood,
Ours
because
are
they're not.
120 years old.
They're not
Yeah.
very big.
120
Yeah.
years old.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
You have to
those,
allow for the tree roots too.
Yeah.
yeah, so those, that's a different type of problem, not so much the size and the capacity, it's just they're old. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've had alleys torn up for months. And because, in any old neighborhood, that's peeling an onion as we look.
Yeah.
Right, it's what we lovingly call you peel an onion. They come over and they open it to fix this, and then 6 feet is 12 feet, is 18 is 24. And you just don't know until you start a repair.
That's a good question. We'll ask.
Merle? I understand why the city might not want to get involved in picking neighborhoods. But this gentleman used the word heavy-handed. If it's not that, it's one size fits all. And I don't think one size fits all in this town. What goes on Washburn Avenue across from the old Dillon store is not what goes on in Westboro.
Yeah.
And you're trying to use a cookie cutter that treats every neighborhood in this town the same, and it doesn't make any sense.
No.
It just makes no sense as a practical matter.
Yeah. We just got done not that long ago, it may have been years, of trying to get our neighborhood zoned for single family to get rid of those units, because we had drug dealers we had to get rid of. We had 3 drug houses on Washburn that we needed to get rid of because it was a multi-family unit and we could not get rid of those. We have a park along Washburn now because they took out all those houses that their absentee landlords let become derelict. And they just had to clean it out, and the only option was put in a park so people are safe. The neighborhoods...
Just to agree with them, if you say it's the same for all neighborhoods, the other neighborhoods, no one's going to be cutting up houses in Westboro to make.
No.
We already have somebody from California there. Don't say that. How can we say that?
Okay.
And I go by
Clarion
the
Hills,
work for
though.
many years.
But I do
And
feel
I've
that
been
in
to
the
the
same
library and I
neighborhoods,
watch those houses.
like
go
Elmhurst,
down.
and like
Yeah.
where you grew up and so forth, are going to be the ones that are targeted the most.
And Warren Mead is gonna be turned into.
Oh,
Fuchsia.
yeah.
Warren Mead is at the most risk of this. Because they're gonna look at it, they're like, no, you're so close to downtown, and then they're gonna slice up the thing, we're gonna get more of those letters in the mail saying, we will buy your house for cash, baby.
Cheapest per square foot.
And let me tell you about
Old
it.
houses, middle of town.
And then what we found is, from studies that I did and research that I did, is that our equity will be on the hook.
Yeah.
From 17th Street to Topeka Boulevard to Huntoon back to Lane, I did a study right after College Hill. It only had 19% home ownership. And that's some of the oldest housing stock we've got in the town. And it's got all the exactly what we're talking about, duplexes and triplexes. And then somebody look at the crime, just overlay a crime map in that area. And it is sad. It's completely a devastation for the middle of our town.
Yeah. For the entire city, people who own their homes have better neighborhoods because we care about what happens in our neighborhood. People who rent don't necessarily care what happens in their neighborhood. They don't keep it safe. They don't report it. They don't care if things get damaged.
Why would they not care?
Because they can move it. It's not their property. If you own your house, you're going to make sure your neighbors are doing what they're supposed to. Or
In
if something
general,
happens,
yes, but
you're
not
going to report
necessarily
it.
everyone, because I do know there's some awesome neighbors
I
in
know
here
there are
rent,
great
so.
people, but if the majority of the homes in the neighborhood are owned by the people who live in them, the neighborhood is safer. That's a statistic thing.
Yeah.
If most of the
Okay, hold on. You said
homes are
statistics
rented,
earlier. Why are you saying, oh, statistics are good now?
they're true.
I don't want, like, go ahead, say what's on your mind.
Keep your anxiety down just a bit. Keep your anxiety down.
It's all good, but say what you had to say.
Okay, no, I heard you talking about, quote, statistical crap earlier when they were doing their presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're saying, oh yeah, statistics, listen to the statistics here. That's a disconnect. And I think it's something that we're all kind of working through is what are the numbers saying? What's the reality? What's our feelings? And I heard somebody say earlier, I don't get what, I heard somebody say earlier that they felt that they weren't being
represented.
No.
Oh, sorry.
That they were not being, they needed to be protected from duplexes and triplexes. And that is really interesting to me, that to be protected from a housing type, I don't think that these as we've been discussing, single family, duplex, triplex, they're all tools and they can be used effectively. And now we're
three categories.
I don't get the generalizations that are happening.
Okay, so boss, so when do you currently rent or own?
Neither.
Do you live with family or something?
Yes.
Okay, all good. So the people that
Oh, we own.
That's great. That's great. So you look at the context, and so what we're saying is, in terms of the original comment, statistical crap is that there's an old adage where if you have an agenda, there's 5 statistical maps that will support that. Okay, it's just an old adage. And what I'm saying is, in terms of statistics you can count on, is that when the zoning makes it so there's going to be a lot more quadplexes, apartment styles, that is statistically proven to affect your property's equity. So that means how much value your home is, aside from the assessments for your taxes, what you could actually get from the bank if you needed to buy another property for an investment or get your kids to go to college or something. If your home goes down in value because the neighborhood has changed, then you might not be able to get that loan for your son's home. You might not be able to get that loan to support a business venture that you're trying to do downtown.
Or sell your house for what you paid for it.
Sell your house for what you paid for it. So there's statistics that can be used to push an agenda forward, and there also are statistics that have been proven over time that affect how much value you have in your property. And then so there's multiple ways to skin the cat on it, but I hope that kind of gives you an insight of where I'm coming from on it. Because as a new homeowner, I moved to Topeka because it's of its single family style, because my hope was I'd eventually not be forever alone anymore and then meet someone and have a family of my own. And so,
Very ambitious.
very ambitious. I know. I'm not holding my hopes up.
Yeah, the Elmhurst Neighborhood Association has one more topic to discuss. I'm sure we don't want to stay for that. But I answer all those who are part of Elmhurst. Thank you.
It's gonna be explosive, so it might be your campaign number.
Do you know that you can blame me for college 100%. I'm telling you that housing area that I was just discussing, we couldn't lease retail because of that.
They're missing the bigger picture here. They're missing the picture. They have their job to do. Okay, the planning commission.
You're a church guy, right?
I don't go to church.
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to turn this off.
I don't go to church.
Henry McClure Live.
I have been